So, how do you even begin to deconstruct the mindset of a true champion? How do you get inside the head of someone who played at the absolute highest level year after year? Well, today, we're going to dive into the process, the craft, and the whole philosophy of Kobe Bryant. A lot of it in his own words.
For Kobe, it all started with this pure, almost sacred love for the game. This wasn't about being famous or even winning, not at the very beginning anyway. It was a really deep personal connection to the basketball itself. He said that as a kid, he was so protective of his first real ball that he was actually afraid to use it because he didn't want to ruin its perfection.
And really, it all boiled down to a single sound. Forget the screaming crowds. Forget the buzzer beaters for a second. For Kobe, the root of his entire life's work, his legendary process, was that simple, crisp tap, tap, tap of a basketball hitting the hardwood. And that first love, that's exactly where we have to start if we want to understand the why behind the Mamba mentality. It's the foundation, the fuel for one of the most incredible work ethic sports has ever seen. I mean, just look at these descriptions. It's almost poetic. He talks about the pebbled leather grains, the perfect grooves, and that bounce. He called it the sound of life and light. To him, this wasn't just a piece of equipment. It was the very heart of his passion. Everything he did, all that sacrifice, it was all built on getting back to this feeling.
And that's really the key takeaway here. Before he was a global icon, he was just a kid in a gym, totally infatuated with the feel and the sound of the game. That early fascination is the only thing that explains the insane, grueling work that came later. It never felt like a chore to him, because it was always connected to that very first love.
Okay, so he's got this foundational love for the game. But how did that grow into the tactical, almost scientific method that was the Mamba mentality? How did he turn pure passion into a repeatable system for just complete dominance?
Well, it really came down to three main pillars that set him worlds apart from everyone else. First, he would just devour game film. Second, he would obsessively master every single detail. And third, he would absolutely win the morning, long before anyone else had even thought about waking up.
This quote just perfectly captures how he looked at film study. See, for him, watching game tape wasn't just about seeing what happened. No, it was about taking the entire game apart, piece by piece, like a watchmaker, just to understand exactly how and why it worked. He wanted to completely deconstruct everything his opponents did.
And he was constantly watching film, on the team plane, at home, basically anywhere he could. This wasn't like cramming for a test for him. It was a genuine passion. He just loved figuring out the puzzles of the game. He was willing to put in way more work than anybody else to find those solutions. In this obsession with the tiny details, it wasn't just for film. He was meticulous about absolutely everything. I mean, think about his sneakers. He cared about the weight, the materials, the traction pattern. He believed that if his foot slid just a single millimeter inside his shoe, it could pull his focus from the game. Now that is a trained level of focus.
And of course, there was his famous discipline. His own coach, the legend Phil Jackson, remembers showing up for an 8:30 a.m. staff meeting and seeing Kobe's car already in the parking lot because he'd already finished his first workout of the day. He was setting the standard before the team was even awake.
So why get there so early? Well, it wasn't just about getting in more physical reps. He said he found a kind of nirvana in the quiet of an empty arena. It was his time for mental prep, to visualize, to find a sense of calm that he could carry with him into the total chaos of an NBA game.
And what you're seeing here is a very deliberate trade-off he made. He knew the routine was brutal, but he chose to sacrifice sleep, not his game, and definitely not his family time. By getting up that early, he could put in the work and still be home when his kids woke up. It was a conscious choice to get that competitive edge without losing sight of what truly mattered.
Okay, so we see the intense individual process. But how did that translate to leadership? Let's take a look at how this mindset didn't just shape him, but pretty much everyone around him. I mean, his teammate Paul Gasol put it perfectly. Kobe challenged everyone to match his intensity. It wasn't enough for him to be great. He demanded that same level of greatness from his whole team, not just in games, but in every single practice. He needed to know if you were truly all in.
And those challenges, as intense as they were, they actually forged an incredible bond. It was never personal. It was always about the shared mission. He wanted to find out what you were made of because he had to know if you could count on you when it all came down to the wire.
That's how you win championships.
This story just perfectly sums up his leadership style. Pau Gasol gets traded to the Lakers, flies all the way across the country, and finally checks into his hotel room after 1 in the morning. Minutes later, there's a knock on his door. It's Kobe. The message was instant and urgent. Welcome to the team, now let's go win. No time to waste.
So, after all that, how do we actually define this philosophy? What is the Mamba mentality really at its core?
Well, in his own words, it's not about the trophy at the end of the road. It's about a total obsession with the process of getting there. It's about the journey, the daily grind, that constant quest to just be a little bit better today than you were yesterday. It's truly a way of life.
And while the focus was always on the process, let's not forget the results, right? This mentality, it produced 5 NBA championships. It's just proof that when you obsess over the journey, the destination often takes care of itself. And for him, winning was everything.
And this wasn't some secret formula he wanted to keep to himself. He wrote his book specifically for the next generation. He was hoping that by understanding his journey, other people could find the power and the inspiration to create their own paths to greatness.
And that really brings his career full circle, doesn't it? It all started with a young kid who just fell in love with the sound of a basketball. That evolved into this obsessive pursuit of perfection, and it ended with him becoming a teacher, sharing all that hard-won wisdom with the world. So, the ultimate takeaway here is that the Mamba mentality isn't just for basketball players. It's a framework, a blueprint for excellence in literally any field. It's about finding your passion, obsessing over the details, and completely committing to the process. So, the only question left to ask is, what will your Mamba mentality be?